Because you clicked on this video, I'm going to make a few guesses about you. You feel overwhelmed in crowded, noisy, or bright environments much more quickly than others do. You need significant alone time to process and recharge after draining social interactions. Small changes in your environment, temperature, lighting, sounds, affect your comfort significantly. You have an unusually strong reaction to caffeine, medications, or other substances. You can sense tension in a room immediately upon entering. You're deeply moved by art, music, and nature in ways that others don't seem to understand. You're highly conscious of subtle changes in other people's facial expressions or tone of voice. You have a rich, complex inner life and spend much of your time in self-reflection. You find your mental landscape heavily saturated by the information and media that you intake. And your friends often come to you for emotional support because you can understand them so well. If you resonate with this term highly sensitive person and experience a number of the occurrences on the list, you are likely a highly sensitive person. Now, this term highly sensitive person, or HSP for short, was coined by Dr. Elaine Aron back in 1996, and it refers to those who are significantly more sensitive to physical, mental, emotional, and social stimuli than others. The coining of this term was an incredibly important distinction because it helps to validate the experiences of millions of people, myself included, which had previously just felt a bit different than the general population without really fully understanding why. And the 5 criteria that compose a highly sensitive person is 1, depth of processing. HSPs tend to process information far more deeply and thoroughly than most people. They tend to analyze and reflect on their experiences just in a lot of detail. This can lead them to possessing a really great creative ability, an ability to notice nuances and subtleties that others might not pick up. There's also 2, overstimulation. HSPs have a lowered ability to block out various forms of stimuli and thus can easily become oversaturated by the energies of other people and the information that they intake. There's also 3, emotional reactivity. HSPs tend to experience both positive and negative emotions just more intensely than other people. 4, empathy. HSPs tend to have heightened cognitive and emotional empathy, allowing them to both feel and deeply understand the emotional states and experiences of other people. And then the last one, 5, is sensing the subtle, which refers to the ability of highly sensitive people to notice subtle details in their environment that others typically just overlook, both physically and psychologically. And according to the book, it says that HSPs make up around 15% of the general population. And it can be common for those, any who identify as being highly sensitive to just feel like they are they're a little bit different. Some feel that they just don't fit within this current society that we live in. They may feel that they are too flawed or too fragile to thrive within this high-paced, high-stimulation world. They may have been told by others to toughen up or to stop being so sensitive, which can just lead to feelings of shame and inadequacy when the way you feel is not validated or really seen and is perceived in a bad way by the world. But the reason that I am making this video is to let you know that your sensitive nature is not a flaw. It is actually a beautiful, amazing, profound gift. And that if you're able to properly leverage this gift, you can thrive and give your unique gifts to life and live just your authentic life calling, which is what we all want to do. And what makes it so difficult for HSPs to flourish currently is because the current structure of society leads us to feeling drained, overstimulated, oversaturated, and just plain tired in everyday life. And so due to the neurodivergency of highly sensitive people, they will likely have to embrace a lifestyle that diverges to a degree from the mainstream way of doing things in order to flourish. So this video includes 10 points or tips that have helped me as a highly sensitive person live just more in alignment with my nature so that I can live a more satisfying and healthy and free and abundant life. And also just so that the unique gifts that I have to offer to the world can be more fully brought to life. So the first and most important point is to fully recognize that your sensitivity is a gift. And I know I just said this, but it is common for highly sensitive people to feel like they are flawed because they feel that they don't fit into society as well as others do. But I want you to consider more that it's probably actually society that is flawed and not you. I mean, we live in a world with severe wealth inequality, where millions live in poverty, where many don't even have access to clean drinking water or consistent food, all the while that other people host parties with thousands of bottles of baby oil in their mansions. We live in a world where the environment is being degraded every day, where profit is prioritized over well-being and flourishing, where human rights are violated on a regular basis. So do you really think that you, as a highly sensitive person, are the problem? I would say obviously not. And I read a beautiful quote on Instagram the other day by Teal Swan that goes, "Sensitive people actually represent the genuine needs and desires of all people. It's just that some people who are not so sensitive were able to adapt in a way where they were able to disconnect from the needs that weren't getting met." And I love this quote because it gets at this idea that sensitivity might simply be an honest, genuine connection to our underlying needs. And that sensitive people may just simply be more attuned to what humans fundamentally require for well-being. And what's interesting is that in therapy, if someone goes to therapy or some serious form of healing consistently, one often circles back to addressing the needs that they have ignored or repressed. And so you often see in later life stages, people reconnect with the vulnerability that they had once suppressed. So this notion that sensitive people are naturally more attuned to what is needed for well-being, I think, is a very accurate one. And actually in Dr. Elaine Aron's book, she describes that there is an evolutionary purpose behind high sensitivity. And actually individuals with high sensitivity is found within virtually all animal species, and that this trait can help identify both gross and subtle environmental dangers, recognize social threats, spot potential new opportunities to perpetuate well-being, and also just anticipate problems before they become serious. So back in the days in which we were hunting and gathering, the sensitivity and depth of processing would have helped us to obtain more food, stay away from predators, notice changes in weather patterns, and just make cautious, careful tribal decisions and just keep peace within the community. But now in our modern world, which looks so much different, these same traits can help to recognize systemic issues and inequalities that others may be desensitized to or unaware of. They can advocate for those whose voices often go unheard, and question societal norms and practices, can foster authentic connection in an increasingly disconnected world, and also create meaningful art and media that raise awareness on important issues, and so much more beyond that list, obviously. So it is my belief that a key function of highly sensitive people is to help bridge a new paradigm towards a more conscious, compassionate, harmonious, and loving world. By being more sensitive to stimulation from the world, HSPs are often the first to notice when something isn't working in our social system, when practices are unsustainable, and when change is needed. The ability to process deeply, feel intensely, and notice subtleties positions us uniquely to help humanity navigate the complex collective challenges that we face today in a way that can foster both individual and collective well-being. So please see your sensitivity as a gift. Don't run from it, don't hide from it, but embrace it. We need you embracing it. The world needs highly sensitive people who aren't numbing themselves, who aren't numbing their fullness. And really, it's from embracing your sensitive nature that all of the other points that I say in this video will have more potency, because, I mean, if you aren't running from or trying to escape from your nature, your sensitive nature, naturally you will do what you can to embrace yourself more fully, which is what the rest of these points are designed to help you do. So the second point is to find your natural rhythm and fully honor it. As I said earlier, the everyday workaday hustle and bustle culture of the developed world is often not suitable for HSPs, working long hours late into the day or night and constantly pushing and striving towards goals, achievements, success, will absolutely drain a highly sensitive person in the long run. The modern workplace demands such as constant availability, high stimulus environments, endless networking, performance under pressure, immediate responses, high productivity are inherently at odds with HSP's needs for increased space to process their emotions and reflect on their experiences, recharge from sensory input, and engage with their life just more thoughtfully and consciously. And in my life, I had my first experiences with this like modern hustle and bustle workplace culture in college, where I was going to school for 6 hours per day, often followed by irregular hours at this restaurant job, I was working because I needed to make money, and this job would often go very late into the night or early morning. And not to mention, within all of that, I had to somehow find the time for homework and studying and maintaining an active social and romantic relationship at that time. And some people I know can actually do pretty well within this like high stimulus, hustle and bustle environment. But for me, having to balance everything was just so extremely difficult and overstimulating. And really, to be honest with you, it just like destroyed my energy and led me to numbing my experiences with substances and whatnot, and just other forms of distraction and coping in an unhealthy way, all of which made me less present and just less able to fully show up with myself and others. So having that experience in college just really solidified my inner knowing. I mean, I already kind of knew that the American hustle and bustle culture was not at all something that I wanted to be a part of. And so later on down the road, I made the decision to just fully prioritize my needs and my well-being, and said I'd do whatever it takes to live a lifestyle that honors my natural rhythm. So instead of getting a corporate job, like most of my friends did after school, I instead decided to write and make videos and start my path of becoming a life coach, all while working at a small family-owned farm-to-table restaurant as a server. This allowed me to have, a lot of autonomy in my own schedule, since I worked just enough hours as a server to get the bills paid, and also just that allowed me just quite a good amount of time to get my business off the ground. And so that flexibility really allowed me to finally live a life that deeply honored my natural rhythms. I had plenty of time to self-reflect and process life during that time, and I could take a day trip to the mountains on a random Tuesday, and I was able to honor my nature as a morning person. Fun fact about me, I've never actually used an alarm clock in my entire life because I'm so sensitive to light. I'll just automatically wake up once there's any light outside. And so, yeah, when I was living in attunement with my nature and at being a morning person, I just felt so much better. Previously, it just wasn't as easy to do that. And yeah, my energy was destroyed as a result. So that was one of the most transformative things for me. Another thing I experimented with was finding the most optimal times to eat, which I've found is best for me to delay my first meal until around 11 in the morning, with the final meal coming before 7, which allows for deep creative work to be done in the early hours of the morning, since I find that's when I'm most sharp cognitively and the focus tends to go down after eating. So those are all just a few of the ways in which I was able to honor my natural rhythms through choosing this lifestyle. And of course, honoring one's natural rhythms will vary from person to person, but the key is creating a life that allows you to listen to and respect your body's natural rhythms and needs. But the key thing to note as a highly sensitive person is that you have the same underlying needs as everybody else, but you are more sensitive to experiencing the downsides of not getting your needs met, of not living in alignment. So you'll wind up feeling dissatisfied, unhappy, wishing things were different, energetically out of whack, and potentially even depressed if you're just living out of alignment. So it's important that as a highly sensitive person, you fully own these needs that you have and you assert them into your reality. And I would even say if it means having a drastically different life and lifestyle than the mainstream in order to meet them. So the third point is to limit media and information intake. Fundamentally, HSPs are less able to block out stimuli. And when it comes to the media and information we consume throughout the day, it can be easy for an HSP to just feel that their mental landscape is just oversaturated. This is especially a problem in today's day and age, where countless media outlets are vying for our attention constantly. And it's also just problematic that the vast majority of media and information out there is just profoundly low quality. Many outlets simply just want to capture our attention with catchy headlines and buzzwords without providing any real depth or meaningful insight. They just want to keep us hooked, so they will just do whatever it takes to rile up our emotions and even mislead us in order to do so. They literally prey on our emotions, especially fear, to keep us engaged and scrolling. In my opinion, the modern day landscape of TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels is mostly pure brain rot, the fucking purest form of brain rot. With some good and well-intentioned content sprinkled in here and there, but the result of the constant media notifications, clickbait headlines, inflammatory opinions, crisis-focused coverage, and political outrage can typically lead HSPs to feeling mentally overwhelmed, anxious about world events, unable to find peace of mind, oversaturated with information, scatterbrained, And so this is why it is crucial for HSPs to be extremely selective about their media consumption, and makes it all the more important that they choose quality over quantity, set boundaries around exposure, only follow thoughtful and nuanced and just sources with good energy, and take regular breaks from consumption. Of course, don't close yourself off from the world, but rather prioritize the needs of your sensitive nervous system and prevent that from overwhelm. So something that has really, really helped me is having a lockbox for my phone. It has a timer on it, and so I just put my phone in there in the evening, and I don't have it unlocked until about 11 a.m. the next day, so I can have my morning creative work free of distraction. But I probably won't recommend locking up your phone if you live alone. That might be dangerous. So, I mean, I don't live alone, and I have other devices to communicate with if I really need it. So yeah, guys, just the point is to limit your media intake, be very conscious about it, because as an HSP, you're fundamentally less able to block out various forms of stimuli. So just make sure that you only have the high quality stuff going in that very beautiful brain of yours. So the fourth point is to develop a healthy level of selfishness. And this point is honestly, I think, one of the most important ones, because due to the high empathy of highly sensitive people, it could become common for HSPs to be overly giving to others, or at least just become overly concerned with the impacts that our actions may have on other people, which can lead us to neglecting our needs and withholding from allowing our authentic self to fully shine in interactions with other people. Because remember, highly sensitive people are hyper aware of the emotions of others. They can sense subtle shifts in mood, and thus they can anticipate potential discomfort, likely leading to an increased sense of responsibility for the well-being of others. And this is truly a gift. It's a huge, 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 amazing gift. But I would say without balance, it mostly goes to waste. I mean, if one consistently puts the needs of others first in excess, an HSP will inevitably find themselves mentally drained, emotionally exhausted, and physically depleted. The constant taking on of the emotional burdens of others, adjusting their own behavior to fit the needs of others, and being disconnected from their own authentic self-expression may be an example of selflessness in excess. And so this is true for all people, but especially for HSPs, in that it's essential to cultivate a healthy level of selfishness. Developing this capacity could include learning to say no without feeling guilty, taking extra alone time to recharge, communicating a truth even if it may be difficult for another person to hear, and also setting boundaries against the people and things that may be draining your energy. The paradox is that by embodying a healthy level of selfishness, we can in turn be more selfless and give our gifts to others from a more grounded, healthy, relaxed, and authentic place. So the bottom line, guys, is that you cannot serve the world to your fullest capacity if your energy is being constantly depleted by excessive attachment and fixation on others. True generosity and authentic love to others can only flow from a foundation of self-care with yourself and healthy boundaries. So take this one as your permission slip to be a little bit more selfish. The fifth point is to get in your body and exercise regularly. Due to the constant processing and analysis that goes on in our highly sensitive brains all day long, it can become easy for our energy to get stuck in our mind, in our headspace. And I've always said about myself, I live mostly in my mind because I literally just think all day long. But I found there's absolutely no better way than to move the energy around than to exercise, to go for a run, to get a good quality lift in. And for me, I love playing basketball. That really helps me. And there's also a deeper component to this as well, because I've always been someone who's very physically active and I work out a lot, but still I had this major mind-body imbalance. And it really wasn't until the past couple of years or so that I realized how deeply disconnected I was from my body. And I just didn't live in my body fully. I didn't inhabit my body fully. And now that I've been reintegrating that, it's just been a game changer. So things like body scanning meditation, if you're familiar with Vipassana meditation, that is a form of body scanning meditation. Tai Chi or Qigong is really good for getting in the body. Various forms of breath work can also be great. And I found this new thing called ecstatic dance, where basically I go to a group here in Seattle, and for an hour and a half in a dimly lit room, there's about 30 or 50 people who gather, and the music starts playing, and you just start moving your body in like whatever way you feel called to in the group that I go to, and there's no talking for the duration of the dance. Literally, it's just a group of people moving their body just freely and openly in whatever way they're called to. And I found it to be something that really, really grows me a lot. A lot of emotional stuff comes up in these dances, and making like the mind-body connection or the emotional body connection and expressing that through the body. It's just very beautiful and very healing, and also I would say very grounding as well in many ways. And it's also just like fun. Like, if something's not fun, then don't do it. And I see how continuing to take up this practice can really be a form of profound somatic development. So I'm going to keep going with it. Maybe I'll make a video about it in the future. But the point of what I'm saying here is that you have to get in your body, so you don't just live in your mind and you're analyzing and you're processing all day long for your whole entire life. I've found that I always pay a price with overthinking and mental indulgence if I don't work out enough. And if it's not, it's like I said, it's not just working out, it's living within and inhabiting your body in such a way that you develop a nourishing and sacred relationship with it. Because when we are fully in the body, we access an intelligence that goes beyond our analytical thinking, which is very often just like our ego. Our bodies carry wisdom, emotional memories, and intuitive knowing that our busy minds might often override or just maybe not pick up. So this is especially important for HSPs because this embodiment will ultimately create a container strong enough to hold our heightened sensitivity without becoming overwhelmed or overridden by it. So you can't neglect the body in this. You have to have a strong body that can hold all of this sensitivity that you are. So that leads me to the sixth point. And the sixth point is to become best friends with nature. I have found that absolutely nothing regulates the nervous system as much as some deep nature absorption. And actually in Japan, they have this thing called, I think it's pronounced Shinrin-yoku, which translates to forest bathing. And it's actually a prescribed treatment to various mental health issues in Japan, to just literally go out in nature for a while and reset. And I think that same thing needs to come to the Western world more. But yeah, I did my senior project in college on the benefits of being in nature. There's countless studies that talk about how nature lowers anxiety, depression, just makes people feel better. And I've never really heard of any case where someone went into nature and felt worse after. And so in my life, I make it a priority to go into deep nature as much as I can. And this is different than just going outside. Of course, go outside as much as you can, get some sunlight. That's always so amazing. But making it a priority to go into some deeper nature, some mountains, a river, a national park, where there's really not any civilization around, will bring, in my experience, the benefits and regulation to the next level. It's also a great way to connect with friends. If you go with friends, or also a great way to connect to yourself. I really like going out into nature alone as well. And yeah, there's really not much else to say about this point. It's pretty intuitive, pretty simple, but prioritizing nature for me has been one of the most nourishing things in my life so far. And as a highly sensitive person, I think it's an absolutely essential thing to do regularly. So the seventh point is to design your living environment mindfully. People say a cluttered environment equals a cluttered mind, and I think this is very true. And of course, highly sensitive people are going to be more prone to experiencing the costs of living within a cluttered environment, and thus experience a cluttered, scattered mind. With this in mind, I consider myself like a sort of a minimalist. I'm not like a hardcore minimalist by any means. I've seen some really, really hardcore minimalists on YouTube who only own like 3 different outfits and have nothing in their rooms except like a mattress and a small desk and literally nothing else. I'm definitely not on that level, and I don't plan to be, but I like to purge myself of items I don't need every now and then and try to be extra conscious that the things I buy are really going to be of value to me. I also, at this point, tidy my living space pretty much every day and make sure I have good organizational systems of everything. That is actually a fairly recent development for me. I can be pretty scatterbrained, and I'm like pretty hyperactive in many ways. So naturally in the past, that has led me to having a pretty messy space, but eventually the cost of things being so messy just got so high that I had to change and purge things and be more organized. And now that I've really prioritized that, I do find myself with more freedom and more energy and really feeling a sense of being at home in my own space, which is so, so important for thriving in this self-actualization work that I talk so much about on my channel. So yeah, guys, just like be conscious of how you design your spaces, your environments, and like make it a decision to every day just tidy it up a little bit. Like just that single freaking step which like your parents probably wanted to ingrain in you when you're like 5 years old, but you resisted so much because you're like, no, mom, that's so dumb. I don't want to make my bed every day, is actually, I'm realizing now in my mid-20s, is actually super important. The eighth point is to have strong boundaries against energy draining people, things, activities, and events. This one is kind of in alignment with the other point, which I said to embody a healthy level of selfishness, and this totally includes that category, but I felt compelled to make a specific point to talk more about this because it's very important. Because highly sensitive people are just more prone to dysregulation from energy draining people and things, and thus they need stronger boundaries against those. And when it comes to determining where exactly I need to have more sharp boundaries, I always love to ask this question: what prevents me from showing up and serving life to my fullest? Contemplate this question, go on a long walk, create a list, because whatever you come up with is what you will probably need to have some strong boundaries against. For me, the biggest energy drainers have been excessive social media use, porn, unconscious weed use, and staying up too late too often. So I've put a lot of measures in place to ensure I don't do those things. And those are just like the biggest energy drainers. Even writing down the subtle energy drainers is also very important. And of course, other people's lists are going to look so much different. Other people's lists might be more people-oriented, having boundaries against certain people, like family and coworkers and certain friends and whatnot. But thoroughly engaging in this contemplation of what drains your energy the most and then having strict boundaries against those things is an absolute game changer. As a highly sensitive person, it is essential for your own self-actualization. Don't be a pushover, don't be a fucking doormat. These boundaries are what you need to thrive and show up fully and give your gifts to the fullest. So again, assert these boundaries, and it's okay to be a little bit selfish. The ninth point is to always be reflecting on how you regulate the intensity of your experience. And I think this is probably the most nuanced point that I'm saying here. Because as a highly sensitive person, as you already know, we possess greater depth of processing. We can experience emotions more intensely. We pick up on subtle things, and we just have less of a filter for all of this stimulation. And that can be at times just plain overwhelming and exhausting. How I experience it, it can literally just be too much sometimes. But when life is too much, when things do get intense, how do you react to that? The way you react in these situations will be one of the most defining things of your entire life as a highly sensitive person. In Dr. Aaron's book, she talks about how highly sensitive people are actually more prone to addictions than the general population. This is because we experience things so intensely and so are likely to use things like substances and other forms of distraction to take the edge off, to relax, and thus we are more likely to fall into toxic habitual ways of regulating ourselves, which can lead to a dependence or an addiction. I've definitely had toxic and less than healthy ways of regulating myself in the past, and still do to a degree, although it's a lot better than it was before. But it's important to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy modes of regulation. The more healthy ones, like I've said in this video, have for me been, like nature, working out, finding my natural rhythm, and honoring it, breath work, meditation, ecstatic dance, etc., etc. But then there's many unhealthy ways as well, like excessive drinking and substance indulgence. But ultimately, it's a matter of what you do when you feel that life is just too much and you have this desire to just take the edge off. When you feel that life is too much, do you pick up the bottle, or do you start breathing deeply? Do you turn to junk food, or do you talk to a close friend that you love and trust? That's the game that this ninth point is really getting at. But also some deeper nuance here that, my perfectionist self had a hard time coming to terms with in the past, because in the past I thought I always had to raw dog life, no substances, nothing even remotely unhealthy. I was a perfectionist and still am in many ways, but something I feel called to share was that I had this belief that I never wanted to use any pharmaceutical pills to regulate myself because I thought it was against the natural order of things. And I fucking hate big pharma because they just profit off people's mental illnesses by keeping them medicated, often at the expense of, not healing more at the root level. And so I had this orientation towards life at one point that I never wanted to engage in that. I just always had to raw dog it. But eventually my sleeping problems got so bad. I was only sleeping 5 hours a night for a period of 4 months straight. I'd always just wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning and just like mind running like crazy, having these like transpersonal acid dreams, like trying to figure out like world problems and all of that. And I got like so dysregulated from it. I, tried meditating more. I tried breath work more. I tried literally fucking everything. But then I finally threw in the towel and I just started taking these anti-anxiety medications to help me sleep better. And it actually worked really, really well. But of course, like the downside of it now is that I'm incapable of sleeping for a single second without these pills. Like I'm literally dependent on them now. And I have problems with that. But at least I'm sleeping a lot better than I was before. And I'm like more regulated because of that. But I said that whole thing because often there's this belief in like more spiritual circles that like all pharmaceutical medication is bad, never use it. And I just don't believe that as intensely anymore. Of course, I still have so many grievances against big pharma and all of the demonstrably unconscious ways that they make money. But I have to say, they did help me sleep better. They helped regulate the intensity of my experience better and making me more functional. And I would say I'm thriving more because of it. So just a perspective I thought would be helpful to some people who I know are part of my audience, who are like might be resistant to that type of thing. But remember the main point of what I'm saying here. What do you do when life is too much? That will be the defining factor of your entire life. And the last point is to trust your intuitive hits. HSPs, because they can sense the subtle so well, often have sharper intuitions than the rest of the population, and so they pick up on people's energy, the energy of places, whether a certain path or opportunity will be something good and expansive for them, or whether it will be something that's just not right for them. I've found for me a lot of my personal entanglements with people and just things I didn't want, and just all the unaligned paths I've gone down, they all stemmed from at one point in the situation, often quite early on, me not trusting and listening to my intuition, just like shutting it out and not listening to it. There'd always be a voice that came through and I would just shut it down. Your body, mind, psyche complex, it's all one unified whole. It carries immense wisdom, very immense wisdom, and wisdom will show up sometimes in a loud and obvious way, but other times just in a soft and subtle and quiet way. And as an HSP, you gotta listen to that inner knowing. Oftentimes after intuitive insight, the ego mind will like come online and try to like rationalize it away because it's scared of what following that truth will lead it towards. And the ego always resists change. So it'll explain away why it shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. But ultimately just listen to that clear voice in your heart, that clear feeling. It will lead you to where you're meant to go. So just trust it. You're safe to trust the voice of your intuition. And I would even say you must trust the voice of your intuition if you want to live a healthy, happy, satisfying life. All right, guys, these are the 10 points. I would love to hear if you guys have any other points you would like to add into the comments, because definitely managing the sensitivity is always something that I'm thinking about and I'm working on, because things, like I said, it can just get intense sometimes. And I also feel that the deeper and deeper you go into the growth journey, the more sensitive you get, because you become more conscious of and often, aware of many of the defensive mechanisms you had in place that suppressed and repressed your experience of reality, which demands new practices and measures and learnings to be implemented so that you can operate more effectively in this new way of being, which tends to be a more sensitive way of being, I find. But anyways, remember that us sensitive people, we are here to help bridge the world into a new paradigm towards one that is more loving, more harmonious, more caring, more compassionate, to one where everyone's needs can be met and where everyone has equal opportunity to self-actualize and self-transcend. I hope this video was of help to you. And if you do resonate with me and you want to dive a little bit deeper, I do offer coaching and mentoring. You can see more information on that in the comments. But anyways, guys, I hope you all have a great day and peace.